Welcome to another insightful episode of Parent Entrepreneur Power. In this podcast, Mary Catherine Johnson and Evan Johnson highlight the successes and struggles of parents in business. They share how to be the example of success in entrepreneurship to foster the same in your child, and so much more. Are you ready to power up?
Okay, welcome everybody. We've got Mike Young here today as our incredible guest, and of course, my amazing co-host / mom, Mary Catherine Johnson. Mike Young, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Evan, thanks for having me, man.
For everyone who might not know you, let's get them up to speed. Tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Sure. I'm the founder and president of the Association for Mental Health and Wellbeing for Entrepreneurs. I'm known throughout the internet marketing industry as the makeover master. And that kind of came about. I started in branding and personal branding, building websites, doing a lot of makeovers like that. But I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years. I spent a couple $100,000 in my self-education the hard way. And now I coach and consult with people to help them figure out the entrepreneurial game and keep their sanity along the way.
Amazing. No, I definitely have known you as the makeover master. But I didn't know a lot about the mental health side of things that you're doing. Is that like a fairly recent addition?
Yeah, I had the idea a while ago. I've had 4 major times over the past 15 years where I had what I would call an entrepreneurial crash. Things feel very complex at times. The world seems like it's collapsing in on you. You got to figure out how to pay your team. You got to figure out how to keep your family together. Still being a parent. I've got a 12 and a 14-year-old, and trying to figure all that out. From time to time, things don't go your way. And my most recent time, I found myself just feeling like nothing was working, and why is this happening again? Those types of questions that I think people have when things aren't going well. And so I had the idea. I launched it last August as far as the idea, and we're just putting together support systems, and we've got a board of directors, and we're looking for a CEO right now, just trying to figure out how can we best support entrepreneurs worldwide and help them realize that they're not alone when they go through those periods of darkness.
Wow. That's just a big wow. Because and the reason I say that is because as entrepreneurs, I've been in business in online business, and my first business started in 2003. And the times that I can say that I've reached that pivotal moment that you mentioned are too many to count.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're really too many to count. And they're usually whenever there's a major change happening, there's some wall I'm going to break through next, or some issue that I have to solve that is not going to go away, and that I finally have to turn my attention to and just get the damn thing done. Yeah. Right. Whatever those things, there are too many to count. I think that is the state of success, is being able to look at those situations, find the resources or the people or the tools that'll help you break through them. But that's kind of a staple of entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like now, success and my definition of success has changed so much when I began, because I started that path in 1998, and it was in 2007, 2008, I had a mortgage company at the time that went from, 10 offices, 250 employees to 0 in a very short amount of time. I went from a liquid millionaire to $200,000 in debt in less than 6 months. Yeah. And so that was kind of my first major crash, was watching that collapse during the financial meltdown. And then you think it's going to be easy, if you've built a big team like that. You think it's going to be, well, I can just build this little team and do it quick and easy. And I wanted what I think everybody else wants, is that entrepreneurial dream of doing something you love and getting paid to do it, and setting your own schedule, setting your own rules. but nobody tells you that the game is massively complex, because first you got to figure out what that thing is.
Yes.
Then you got to figure out how to position it, market it, advertise it. There's a lot of moving parts to this game, especially if you start from scratch like I did. And I think that's the definition of success to me now, is falling in love with that process of watching things fall apart and then putting them back together, and things fall apart and putting them back together. And if you can kind of get used to that process, you really start to win not only the entrepreneurial game, but any game, because you learn to control your reactions to things.
Isn't that it? That's exactly it. That I agree 100%. And I had a very, very similar parallel journey, right? It collapsed in the 2008. I was in retail. Yeah. Right. I had my own online store, right? Had to build it from scratch. Shopify didn't exist yet. Right. And do all that. And then all of a sudden to see it just start dropping like a stone, starting in 2008, and identifying with that and saying, I can't let this die because it's me. Right. It's my identity.
It's so uncomfortable too, because a lot of times if you build that thing, we all do this, you build that as part of your identity. So losing a house or losing a car, if your identity is built around stuff, and those things get stripped away, it feels like somebody cut off a limb, That's right. Yep. But yeah, I mean, and you feel alone, when things fall apart, you feel like you're the only dummy that can't figure it out, because the industry is projecting strength. It's projecting like Lamborghini photos and vacations. And so you think everybody's got it figured out, and yet you're the only one. And that was a real problem for me, and why I created the association. Is we need to be able to reach out to somebody and talk with another human being that understands, another entrepreneur in these cases. And we need to be able to have that release valve without feeling isolated and alone, like we're the only one that can't figure it out.
Yeah. Isolated, alone, guilty.
Yeah.
All those things. So I think that is so perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that, Mike, because it's parallel. I had the exact same experience. And until I took away that identity, until I no longer, I was going through this process, and I'm just like going into debt and trying to figure out what am I going to do differently. And my wonderful accountant says, why are you hanging on to this dying business? And I'm like, because if it fails, that means I fail. And he said to me the wisest words. He's like, you are not your business.
100%.
And I'm like, bubbling idiot. I'm crying. I give him this big sloppy wet kiss, because he also happens to be my husband. And basically say, okay, fine. Now what are we going to do? And start turning that around. And it really is that exact thing. So if we as entrepreneurs, it's not like we're going to take that experience away from our kids, or bringing it back to the focus of this conversation. It's not that we're going to take that away from our kids, because they're going to have issues they're going to have to face every day if they're going to be at work or an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter. There are hurdles they're going to have to overcome. But if we can help them start a little further down the path than we did, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I talk with my kids. I'm very open with my kids. I share the struggles, probably too open, but I know my kids, I felt like my job was not to get to a place where I'm quote unquote, like showing them, this is how you do this is how you do that, because they're not building their own strength, their own character. They have to solve their own problems. And so I felt like it's my job to prepare them to learn how to handle themselves, so that when they do turn 18, they go out on their own, they're able to move through this world and have those unknown things come at them, and know how to react and know how to course correct and never give up, really.
Isn't it? And I just got to say, this has gotten me in such an amazing direction. I love this conversation, because parenting is very similar to our own entrepreneurial journey. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to tell our kids that. So the success of our relationship with our kids, I think, is rooted in our ability to look at ourselves and control our reactions to situations, just like you just mentioned. Controlling your reaction to when these things happen. That really does create a better parent-child relationship as well. Because the more we react to the things they want to do, especially if it's not what we want them to do, the more our relationship is fractured.
For sure.
And so if we can take that same skill of being able to control our reactions and be open to new opportunities without personally taking an emotional hit for it, like we're bad because we're coming up against this situation, the more we can do that, the more we can participate and prepare our kids for their own future by modeling that, number one, and by demonstrating it to them and guiding them through those choices with that non-identity. In other words, I'm not identifying with one or the other of your outcomes, child. It's your outcome. I'm not going to try and force you into one or the other. I'm just going to hopefully help you guide. Even if I do want you to go a certain way, it's got to be your choice.
For
right?
sure, for sure. And I think, my kids are a blessing to my business. And it was, you've heard that old saying of like, if you have a big enough why, you can make it through any how. And early in my entrepreneurial journey, I had actually listened to an interview with the Dalai Lama, and somebody asked him, if I want to teach my kids how to do something, what do I say? And the Dalai Lama said, it doesn't matter what you say, it only matters what you do, because your kids are going to model your behavior. And that's when I started to realize this all ties together. It's not my business and my kids and my relationship with my wife. It's all one big blend of everything. It's very difficult to have a successful business if you're falling apart in your personal relationships. It's very different. I wouldn't say it's a big balancing act. I would just say it's all one thing. And you have to learn how to blend all of that. And nobody gives you a manual in the beginning. They don't say, hey, here's your entrepreneurial manual, here's your parent manual. You kind of are on your own to figure out a lot of this stuff out. And the shortcut is just finding a network of people, surrounding yourself with people that have already done what you're trying to do in certain areas of your life. That's, if there is a cheat code to this game, that's it, is decide what you want to do, find somebody that's already done it, and surround yourself with them.
And then get out of your own way.
Man, you mentioned it a couple of times, it's that letting go process.
Yeah.
It's like we cling to these things, and a lot of times those things aren't working. And the moment you let it go, it just frees up space for something new to come into your life. And I struggled with that I would say I was stuck for a decade, clinging on to things instead of letting go and just moving to the next evolution. And there's always a next evolution. There's always a next obstacle. There's always a next problem. So You got to fall in love with the process at some point.
Yes. Sorry, Evan. Let me just say one more thing and I'm going to shut up so you can talk too.
You're good.
What you mentioned a minute ago too, with the Dalai Lama, really, I don't know who said this, and I can't quote and give credit to the person who said it, but it is completely true, especially with all of these other areas that we have to live in every day that impact the world every day. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you're performing if you're dishing your relationship or your physical well-being, how can you say you're doing great as an entrepreneur? It's how you approach and do one thing is basically representative of how you do everything. So
I think that's the key, is the word approach, how you approach everything. And it's that same, it's kind of getting to the meta level of the conversation, which is you can get lost in the details of everything. But if you can play at a game where the actual game you're playing is this game of letting go and transformation and letting go and transformation, then you can play any game, because then you've got the skills to play. It doesn't matter if it's parenting, doesn't matter if it's entrepreneurship or building a better race car. It's like you're falling in love with the process of incremental improvement.
Amen. No, truly. And
I think that's the other thing, is like the incremental improvement, especially if you value the goal that you're going after. That's what kicks off dopamine. That's what makes us feel good. That's what's analgesic to our bodies. So it's like you find something that really means something to you to go after. You find a reason why you're not going to quit. For me, it was my kids. Mm-hmm. If I quit, it shows my kids what it looks like to set a big goal and then not follow through on your agreements, not to basically give up. And that was more painful to me than quitting itself. And that's what actually got me through the dark times. was I had these 4 or 5 moments in my life where it was like, do I quit? And then my next question was, what's that showing my kids it's okay to do? And as soon as that conversation hit, it was always more painful to show my kids to go ahead and give up.
Yeah. I agree 100%. That's exactly, I actually reached one of those places the end of last year. I mean, everything just coming in, and the economy and the COVID and the business, and, people hurting in the world, and all these things, and jobs, and everything, and looking at my particular uh, business and what I'm doing and the technology I'm working with, and the schizophrenia is the only way I'll be able to describe it, of some of these social platforms and all of that. It just basically, I reached that point where I'm like, I just don't want to do this anymore. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, for
why
sure.
Why am I doing this? And it was not necessarily just my kids, because I know they know that I'm gonna, whatever I put my mind to, I'm gonna do. I've already proven that to them, and I've already shown them that. But it was more the people who were relying on me, my students who take my courses and are in my masterminds. I can't let them down. I can't just abandon and say, that's it, I'm done, I'm retiring, bye-bye. I can't do that. It's not my time yet to do that. So
Sure.
I've got to find a way. I've got to figure it out. I've got to find a workaround. I've got to find a new direction. I've got to do something. And that just sparked
It's
a whole
amazing
new.
too, like when things collapse in on you, it's amazing at how much gets solved with the basics. And this is kind of that conversation of everything blended together. But how are you sleeping? Are you sleeping consistently? What are you putting into your body? Are you getting enough water and good nutrition into your body? Are you exercising? And like if you can master the daily routines and take care of yourself a little bit, it's amazing how the depression can go away. The feelings of imminent collapse and the anxiety that we all feel starts to disappear if you're getting proper sleep and putting good stuff into your body and exercising a little bit.
And also going outside of yourself and making it all about you,
For
and
sure.
actually starting to work for others.
That is absolutely a huge, like probably one of the most pivotal keys to the game is getting outside of yourself and shifting your entire focus to your clients, shifting your entire focus to what you're accomplishing as an overarching mission, and really determining, I think it comes down to determining the rules of your own game. Like, because we're all kind of playing this game. You can play it through Facebook ads, you can run the organic game, you get to choose this game. And so we sometimes we choose a game that's not scalable or sustainable, and then you end up in this place where things are falling apart. It's not that you're did anything wrong, it's just that you have some course corrections to make, and probably a lot of things you just need to let go of,
Amen. So sorry, Evan, I just monopolized the conversation, but oh my goodness, yes, I agree.
I've just been enjoying myself as a listener, so I'm not complaining.
So now bring that to your kids. Now, how are you? Are they in your business at all? Are they participating?
Well, first, how old are your kids?
Yeah. Kids are 12 and 14. 12-year-old daughter, 14-year-old boy. They're not in my business. They've watched me their entire lives, they've watched me pull my hair out for most of their lives, because it took a long time for me to, I realized that the industry is pitching strategies, tools, and tactics all the time. It's projecting everybody's doing well. But there's some foundational things you need before your business is ever going to work. Like, you need positioning and authority and credibility, and you need, to show results with your business. But then there's an underlying thing with most people that I coach, is there's usually some form of personal resistance holding people back. And for me, that was the loss of the mortgage company. It was a personal trauma, I would call it, that my brain had a hard time. It was repeating a negative loop saying, you're an idiot, you're stupid, you lost $1 million, you did that, whatever that loop was. But that wasn't serving me. That wasn't helping me focus on what I needed to do to turn the corner. And my kids have watched that whole journey. So it's nice to kind of, I guess, come out the other side a little bit, and also watch me have a lot more balance in my life today. Because for a long time, I was the guy that would sit at my computer for 14 straight hours, not take any breaks, not put good nutrition into my body. And then I wondered why I kept collapsing, because I wasn't playing a sustainable game for myself.
Yeah, I've seen that happen to entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs too. It can happen in any profession, to be honest. And
For
it's
sure.
rough because especially if it's something that you focus on the one thing and then it's like, oh, I don't have time for exercising. I don't have time for this. I'll just order food instead of making something healthy. So I know that it can be difficult to make that happen, but it's like if you do, then everything is so much better. Like you guys were talking about. I mean, it was the whole most of the conversation that's been happening so far is about that, and it's
Yeah,
very true.
for me, it was totally a process of continually letting go of things. It's like I always remember Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week book. For some reason, he had this little DEAL acronym. It was like, define what you want, eliminate everything that doesn't need to be there, automate everything that you can, and then liberate yourself from the business. Because those, like you said, Mary, those two things are not the same thing. The business is not you, and you're not the business. It's like you've got to be able to, if you're not able to separate yourself from the business, you're actually not running a business.
That's
You
right.
know, it's just a job that you
Oh
created
yeah,
for
and I
yourself.
found most entrepreneurs who do the 14-hour days. I don't know if this was you, but a lot of times when I see that, most of that work is just busy work that could be fairly easily outsourced.
For sure, for sure.
You know?
And I think the challenge in the beginning is like it's cash flow. It's especially if you
Oh
start
yeah.
from scratch. Cash flow is like, I always describe it as a drunk monkey with Alzheimer's punching you in the side of the head as you're just trying to run the race. You know, it's like it keeps reminding you like, oh, I'm so excited about this thing I'm working on. And then it's like this voice in your head, like, oh, did you pay your team? Oh, did you pay the bills? Oh, when's your next sale coming? Where's your next lead coming from? And so you're constantly getting distracted. And it comes down to like, you either have to learn to control your mind and control your focus, or you need to figure out other ways to shut that conversation off and let somebody else. Like for me, the transition was letting my wife deal entirely with the finances. I'm the creative type, and I couldn't be looking at that at all. I had to focus on the thing that I was going to do for the business, which was driving leads and revenue. And so that separation and letting go of certain parts of the business really helped.
I didn't need a drunk monkey for that. I've got a husband who asks me those questions on a regular basis.
I feel the same way, but if my wife ever knew that I called her a drunk monkey, then she would just be very
You'd be
upset.
in big trouble. Yes. Yeah, it's great to have that other side though, right? I get it. I totally get it. We need to be able to focus on the creative aspect and the driving aspect that we're best at, and leave some of the other things to someone else to handle, so that it doesn't take up mental space and rob us of the energy that we need to.
That's it. Yeah, we've only got so much RAM, right? It's like as soon as your RAM your computer stops working as soon as you're full, you know. And I think to answer the original question, you know, my kids are not involved in the business, but what they're involved in is conversations with me about the mindset and the attitude that I'm going through with the business. How do I encounter, like, I a bad example, you know, my car's tire could blow up today or something like that. They would see me react very calmly. Nothing's wrong. What are we going to do about it? Because it doesn't matter if it's 5 seconds ago or if it's World War II. They're both in the past. There's nothing we can do about the past. So as soon as it blows up, are we safe? Are we secure? That's kind of that fight or flight mechanism. Okay, we're secure. Okay, what are we going to do about it? And that's really what I want my kids to fall in love with, is that process of unknown comes at you. Don't freak out so bad that you go in a hole and freeze and start running away. Just realize where you're at, realize everything's okay, and then decide what you're going to do to fix it.
Amen.
Yeah, that's a good way to like model that for kids, I think. Have you seen, like, speaking of modeling stuff, your kids have seen you be an entrepreneur for your entire life, or for their entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
And have they expressed any interest in being entrepreneurs themselves?
My son definitely wants to work for himself and do something in that realm. I don't know if my daughter does yet or not. I think so. I've always been a big fan, like they're their own unique souls, and I want them to develop as they want to. Like I'm not pushing them in a direction, I'm supporting what direction they choose to go in. And with I want them to understand the truth, because like one of those things, like when I was growing up, I was playing baseball. And when I watched even Major League Baseball on TV, I watched guys strike out, I watched guys make errors. But the entrepreneurial game is different because you see everybody doing well. And so you're actually walking into an illusion.
Yeah.
And I want them to, if they choose to go down that entrepreneurial path, I want them to understand what they're actually walking into, because then you can be less harsh on yourself and less critical of yourself when things don't go your way, because you can realize from the start what game you're playing is wildly complex and there's a lot of moving parts.
Oh yeah. No, I honestly, I hate it when I come across those pictures, like a Facebook ad where someone posing you gets like a Lamborghini or something like that. I'm like, first of all, this person probably doesn't even own this Lamborghini. And second of all, even if they do, we're seeing like the last 0.1% of their journey as an entrepreneur.
100%.
So it's like, I mean, it definitely sells more courses. If you do what I did and buy a Lamborghini in 90 days, 90 day this, 90 day that, and I'm like, oh, would you shut up? That's not how it works. And so it's cool that, if and when your kids do decide they want to, be a part of that world, it's good that it'll be for realistic reasons.
Well, and I think it's extremely important for people that want to say that they want to go into the entrepreneurial game. The world gets diced up in a lot of different ways these days. People like to categorize people in different categories, black, white, male, female, whatever the things are. But the reality is we're all human, and we all kind of fall into the same 5 personality types and the 10 underlying traits. And so I think part of this game is figuring out who you are and how you're wired. Because if you're hardwired, like a lot of my team is hardwired for safety and security, like they're not going to have success in an entrepreneurial game because it's way too chaotic for them. My wife would never survive in the entrepreneurial game. She wants safety and security, and she's a different personality type. And so entrepreneurs should just realize, like, you're usually creative by nature, which being creative means you're probably going to be doing 99% of things very, very poorly, as you have all these exciting ideas that you're going to work on. So you've got to surround yourself with other personality types that kind of rein you back in from time to time.
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so here's the deal. Number one, you just said exactly what I believe 100%, which is, I mentioned a minute ago, we try, if we can help our kids start a little further along the journey than we did, then we are completely successful as parents. And what you just said is that you're trying to help your kids understand the game they're playing, which you didn't get until you went through the 2008 crash. So that's exactly what you, and once they can understand that mindset issue, all the rest is just semantics. All the rest is just tools, and we can find those tools everywhere and anywhere. So I get that.
That's the frustrating part. Like, I was getting bombarded with strategies, tools, and tactics.
Yeah.
But when you master the meta game, the strategies and tools and tactics are almost irrelevant which one you choose. It's like, do I want a red hammer or a green hammer? It's like,
that's it. That's it. I was just talking to a guy this morning, same exact thing. He's like, I want to reach 50K a month. And I'm like, fantastic. Where are you now? I'm at 10K. Great. So what's that going to feel like? Oh my gosh, it's going to be great. I'm like, yeah, but really, how is your life going to change? So we went through all of those things. And he's like, that 50K has been on my quarterly goals for the last 2 years. I'm like, all right, so what's really stopping you? It's not the tools. It's not that you need to go buy this other course. It's not any of those things. There's something in here that's saying, I either am not good enough, I can't do it, it's not going to be different, I'm scared of it, something's stopping.
100%.
It's not a tool that you need.
And when you can figure out whatever that thing is, and it's different for everybody, you figure that out and you squash that, and everything begins to
and
change.
we got to it. And it was specifically because he thought he was still an employee, and he still thinks of himself as unemployed because he lost his job.
Yeah.
So he's an accidental entrepreneur. But anyway, beyond that though, When we look further, I also love what you were talking about with your team being needing the safety and security. One of the things that I do with everyone coming into my organization is they must take the DISC analysis, DISC, and they must be opposite of me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am a very high D, high I. I'm very extroverted. I'm, innovative. I'm, directing. I'm all those things, but I'm a very low control safety.
Yep.
I need very little of that. That's my least necessary thing. I don't need to feel safe. I don't need to feel that kind of, going along with things, making sure that things are legally, obviously legal, but you know what I mean? I don't need to make sure the rules are followed, all that stuff. I need people around me who can do that because I don't do it.
Yep.
And I need people around me who can hold me accountable to that and keep me grounded to that.
Yeah, and then you start to realize, okay, if I have an IS on my team, like I'm an IS, and so it's like, well, the IS is always going to feel like I'm running them over with a bus because I'm a DI, so I'm a driver. And but if we don't have a C on the team, we're going to be breaking so many rules and laws unintentionally because we need a rules-based person. So you begin to build this super team, really, is what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's built on a basis of trust together. You all get on the same page with the same mission. You agree in the beginning, we're going to have honest and candid conversations with each other. And through those conversations, we're going to listen to each other and we're working on something together. And because if you don't set that up in the beginning, it becomes increasingly difficult. You feel like your team is against you because you're just different personality types, and you actually are living different realities. You have different subjective experiences even coming into the team. And so you need to tap into those instead of exclude them. And I think that's fundamentally, I think that's part of the problem we're experiencing today worldwide is we're learning as a species how to communicate together again, because we invented this technology, and now it's like everybody's comes into memes and sound bites. And then next thing I know, I'm an expert on the political biases of the left and right because I watched a meme. And so, I think it comes back to communication and trust and living authentically and working towards something that you find deeply meaningful to you.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yes. And the same thing with bringing it back to your kids, just like that team analogy, my team knows, and I feel very comfortable for them to say, you know what, Mary, we probably shouldn't do that because of this, this, and this. And sometimes I'm going to make them a little uncomfortable and say, well, thank you for that, but we're going to do it anyway. And sometimes they come to me and say, we need to do this, this, and this. And I have to feel comfortable that their expertise is coming through and that I need to listen. And we need to be able to communicate that way to know when those things are happening. Same thing with our kids. Same thing with bringing our kids into an experience with entrepreneurship. If they're safe, if they understand that we're not trying to get them to do what we want them to do, but we're actually creating an environment for them to discover that for themselves, then all will be wonderful, because all the how will work itself out because we're all coming with that same mindset. Evan, I know we've talked a lot about college specifically, and how many people we've talked to that really are like, yeah, sure, I want my kids to be an entrepreneur, but no, they have to go to college.
Is there a question there?
Well, mostly for Evan to weigh in because I know he has.
Oh yeah, well, it's interesting kind of talking about that, because we talk about parent entrepreneurs with their kids, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just kind of curious, especially because they're not there quite yet, but they're 14 and 12. You said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's like they're not there quite yet, but they're closer than if they were like 5 and 2 or something like that. So, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts, we've been having the discussion, and that's what it is. Like, I don't feel like I run my family with authoritative, like dictatorships, like I'm not telling my kids what to do all the time. We're having discussions about it. I ask a lot of questions, I'm like, how do you feel about this? What do you think about that? Because I want to see where their mind's at. I personally don't put a lot in today's world. I personally don't put a lot of weight into a university degree anymore. And that's just my personal bias. But I'm also very hesitant to share that with my kids so strongly that they believe that that's right. because I really believe there is no right or wrong. There's rights and lefts, and everybody's on their own path. And so for my kids, I think my son right now is thinking that he'll probably take a gap year and do a little bit of traveling and then go get his college degree. My daughter, I don't know at this point, being 12, I don't know if she's kind of wrapped her mind around it enough yet. But I personally, I don't care if they go to college or not. I want them to find something that they're passionate about that'll make the world a better place. And I want to see them have success in whatever that definition is for them.
That's a really cool answer. I
Mhm.
love that. that's
it's just the truth.
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah.
at least my truth.
Yeah. No, I love that, because a lot of parents, it's like an authoritarian regime that they have going on in their own house. Or it's
It
like, no,
seems
they
like
have to go to college.
that's the commonality, right? It's like every generation thinks that the next generation after them is somehow weaker and not as tough, and the generation looking at the generation above me, we think they're old and antiquated and they do things in weird ways. And so it's always been this battle between generations, it seems like. And I think for me, that's, I don't know. I had a very easy upbringing. My parents were always there for me, but it was almost like I didn't face enough adversity when I was young. They were always trying to solve my problems for me. Everybody got a trophy, those types of things. I don't believe that that's actually better for my kids. I want them to experience, I want them to fall down from time to time. I want them to learn how to pick themselves back up. And I think so far anyway, from what I'm seeing, my kids are very responsible. They're learning that process of how to take care of themselves. Of course, there's times I come in and I need to solve the problem, but there's also times I need to let them experience that adversity and figure out how to overcome it themselves.
Right. I mean, I think, because failure is its own conversation. I mean, I could start a whole other podcast about failure, because very few people do I know of, like, I don't know very many people who have a healthy response to failure, right? Because failure, as honestly, I mean, it's a good thing, because you actually learn from failure. Like, you fall down, you learn how to not fall down. You know, Whereas, if you don't fall down, then when you do eventually fall down, then you have no idea what you're supposed to do. So,
Yeah, I mean, Carl Jung called it the circumambulation. But either way, when you take action towards your goals, it's either going to work or it's not going to work. It's really a binary decision. And so you need to get comfortable with what happens if it works and what happens if it doesn't work, and get comfortable with that process, because either way, you're learning. Like, if something doesn't work, you're learning a lesson of it's like it's teaching you at the same time something else has got to work. If it does work, then great, it worked, and stick with it. So you're always kind of taking what didn't work, figuring out if it even needs to be there, or adjusting in some way until it does. And then that's the harder game. The harder game, I think, is, when do you let things die? When do you let things go? You've tried 53 times on something the same way. Like, maybe it's time that thing just needs to go.
right. And it's like, there's a world of infinite possibilities, and you have an entire life to live. And so if something doesn't work, it's like, it doesn't really matter, because you can just try something else, and you can
Yeah,
just
I
keep
mean,
doing that.
and I think it's that, Gary Vee kind of talks about that. It's this balance between patience and hustle. It's like, you got to be patient, but you've got to put some time pressure to yourself, because otherwise, especially a lot of creative entrepreneurs, like, if you really just let them go, they spend like 90% of their time in dreamland, eating Cocoa Puffs on the couch, watching cartoons. And it's like, so you have to have some time pressure. But I think this game is self-regulated too. It's like, you've got to learn to play your own game, because I know people that they really operate best from midnight to 4 a.m. That would wreck me, and that wouldn't work for my family and stuff. So you've got to figure out where your optimal times, where's your tipping point for law of diminishing returns, and so for me nowadays, like, I wake up, I have a morning routine, takes me a couple hours. I have about a 90-minute block of work. I take an hour break and another 90-minute block of work. And that's my routine. Because what I was doing was actually less efficient. Sitting at my desk 12 hours a day, no breaks, was less efficient. It was worse for my health. It was worse for my mental health. And that was, it took some significant wake-up calls for me to change my own habits.
I like that. Yeah, it's so interesting. It's something I think about a lot as well, and I try to, if someone expresses something, something like that, I try to be like, hey, let's talk about something different, because like the think about a different idea, because people think 12 hours of work or working, hours and hours and hours, like the more you work, the faster or more successful you'll be. Whereas it's like, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, most of that's just busy work anyway. It doesn't actually matter. And also, if you're working for 12 hours, I feel like by hour like 4, you're probably not going to be very productive without any
Yeah,
breaks. So
they'd
it's
have
like,
a bunch of they'd have 5-hour movies all the time if that was the
yeah,
case, right? It's like every movie is pretty much, it's from 90 minutes to 2 hours, for the most part. And you
yeah,
start watching a movie like the Titanic or something that's really long, and you're falling asleep by the end. You just don't have the mental bandwidth to make it that long.
exactly. So I think what you're doing with two 90-minute blocks is probably way, way more efficient than 12 hours of uninterrupted work.
Yeah, and I really do think everybody's, I don't know, tell 2 90-minute blocks to a guy like Elon Musk, and he'll probably punch you in the face, because he's just got a different mentality about it. For him, you got to find your own rhythm and what works for you. There are probably people on Earth that are hardwired to just sit on a beach, sit in a hammock, and that's what makes them happy as hell. I think that's the game, is like, you've got to figure out the actions that you take that make you happy, because happiness is just a byproduct of doing the right things and being in alignment for yourself.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And
No,
the
that's
link
amazing.
between that and making money to be able to support yourself is the key to happiness.
Yeah, and I think it's like most of the game in entrepreneurship is just showing up properly with a proper mindset, the attitude, and in the beginning it's tough. So many people, they really do need the sale, and so they show up needy and they kind of awkward and desperate, and that vibe gets projected onto their prospect or their future client. And so you've got to learn to kind of control that in the beginning, because it's a balancing act for sure. It's like you've got to balance enough sales so you can eat and breathe and stay alive, with figuring out the business as you systematize and automate a lot of things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's powerful. So as we, begin to wind down the conversation, we like to end with a powerful question. And that is, if you were to die tomorrow, what would be the entrepreneurial legacy that you would leave behind for your kids to, use if they potentially become entrepreneurs themselves?
I would say, figure out the game that you're playing for you and why it matters. I would hope that everybody realizes they can have their own definition of success, and really learn to fall in love with that process of things not working out and you figuring out how you're going to course correct and pick them up and transform them into something that is working for you. That's what I would hope to leave to my kids. I hope they understand that if that this game's played with people, and so if you figure out how people tick, and you study psychology and you study neuroscience and you figure out that game, you can start to collaborate better with people. You can start to find different personality types that are filling gaps in your systems. And so it's really, I want my kids to understand, if you understand yourself, you shift your entire focus to your ideal clients and helping them solve their problems through your products and services. You're going to have a hell of a lot of success in this game.
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
got it.
Perfect.
I think that's awesome.
Well,
thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
thank
so
you, guys.
much. Thank you so much for coming on the show. For the people who are interested in you and what you do, where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, they can find me online at themakeovermaster.com, or the Association for Mental Health and Wellbeing for Entrepreneurs is a weird website, but it's amhwbe.org.
Perfect. We'll have the link in the show notes, and people can check you out. Thank you so much, Mike, for coming on. Thank you for listening to this episode of Parent Entrepreneur Power. Hopefully you came away with valuable tools you can use in your business, life, and relationship with your kids. If you want to hear more about our mission, or if you want more insights into cultivating your parent entrepreneur power, join our movement to make entrepreneurship more accessible to parents and their kids at parententrepreneurpower.com.